The Tampa Bay Buccaneers take their fans on an emotional roller coaster ride. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live post-game reaction episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as editor-in-chief of the 813.tv. Here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. The biggest takeaways and game balls coming up in a little bit. Real quick, want to give a shout out to all of you in the chat. There are a ton of you in there. Fausto, Jay Jones, Destined for Greatness, Demon Hunter, Lakita, who pulled off the road on the drive home back from Atlanta just to participate in the live show. I appreciate each and every one of you. But we are going to start this one off with the biggest moment of the game. And this one, to me, was a pretty easy one to pick out. For you guys in the live chat, drop what you thought was the biggest moment in this game. But after the Bucs jumped out to a 17-0 lead, they came out of halftime trailing 27-24. The defense stood tall on the Saints' opening drive, forced a 3-and-out. Then the Bucs offense had a 3-and-out of their own. The defense once again forced a 3-and-out by the Saints and got the ball back in the hands of Baker Mayfield and the offense. They started off that drive inside their own 10-yard line. Couple of nice plays by Sean Tucker. Got the Bucs offense a little bit of breathing room. A Baker scramble gets a first down. Another Sean Tucker run. A Bucky Irving run. Then everything changed. Under pressure, Baker was forced to dump it off to Chris Godwin for about 2 yards. And it looked like it was maybe going to be a 2 or 3 yard gain. He might have been able to stretch it into a first down. But Chris Godwin enters a completely different realm when he faces the New Orleans Saints. He forces 3 missed tackles and was off to the races for a 55-yard touchdown. And that moment right there flipped the game. That play gave the Bucs a 31-27 lead, and it got Baker Mayfield calmed back down. He was getting those happy feet, had some really bad passes in the second quarter. He had 3 interceptions in that second quarter, one of which completely not his fault. That one's totally on Jalen McMillan. One of them definitely Baker's fault. And then one of them is somewhat arguable. In real time on the broadcast, it looked like it was his fault. It was a pass that was batted into the air, intercepted by, of course, Cam Jordan. But I need to see kind of the all-22 angle to really determine, where Baker was looking, what kind of lane he thought he had. But regardless, 3 interceptions in the second quarter. But to open up the second half, that Godwin touchdown got things back to normal, and it really dialed Baker 100% back in. After that, the Buccaneers scored on 3 of their last 4 possessions, thanks in large part to the running game that we're going to talk about more in a little bit. But getting that lead back after such a disastrous quarter really galvanized the team as a whole. It was a huge bounce back after Mayfield had more interceptions in one quarter than he had all season coming into this game. And he still finished with 4 touchdown passes, which is a season high this year. He had 2 in each half, and his touchdown to interception ratio dropped from 5.5 to 1 to 3 to 1, but that's still pretty good. You can kind of look at that second quarter as an anomaly. Both sides of the ball had not looked that bad at any point all season. I know there was the bad loss to the Atlanta Falcons. There was a bad loss to the Denver Broncos, but as a whole, the team had not played that poorly in any game that they did in that second quarter. So you can point to Baker only having one quarter of really bad football all season long. And I think that this game, especially that second half, can spark something within the team. That when things go bad or when the wheels are starting to fall off, this team can rally and respond. I have said numerous times on this show, on radio spots, on the 813, that this offense can go toe-to-toe with any offense in the league. And if you want to get in a shootout, this Buccaneers offense can shoot it out with you. 51 points. That is the second most points scored in franchise history. Think back to teams past. Teams, especially before the Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles era, that would have just rolled over and died after blowing that 17-point lead and trailing at halftime. Not this team. Not with this leadership. Not with the character of this roster. They know what they can accomplish. They know what they can do. And one bad quarter, one bad drive, one bad play is not going to cause them to collapse and lose a football game. There is no quit. There is no one hanging their heads on the sidelines and admitting defeat. They keep fighting. To me, all of that started with the touchdown by Godwin, but this can be one of those games that has a domino effect for the rest of the season. Just like that Falcons game could have had a domino effect, and that Falcons game could have spilled over into the Saints game. The Bucs, after being up 17-0 and allowing 20 unanswered points, could have gone to the sideline and said, oh crap, here we go again. Here we go again. We're falling apart and we're going to lose this game. But they didn't. It was the complete opposite of what you saw in Atlanta. It was a team that rallied behind their quarterback, rallied behind their defense, and were able to go out and have a 27-0 second half. It was absolutely fantastic. Going to jump into the chat real quick here. I'm going to scroll up here and see what some of you guys named as your biggest moment. David in the chat says, I thought the biggest moment was Zion's pick. It gave us a spark. That was huge. That was absolutely huge. Chet says Bucky's 31-yard rush in the third quarter was the big play for me. And you know what really stood out to me about that run? I talked about it on Twitter. I sent a text out to the insiders. The series before, Baker Mayfield scrambles and comes up inches short on a third down and gets injured in the process, goes to the blue tent. And I said that I felt that if Baker wasn't hurt, the Bucs go for that on 4th and inches. Instead, they punt it away. But you end up with that Bucky Irving run. And who is going full speed down the field to catch up to Bucky Irving and lay a block? Baker Mayfield. That is the reason. It's stuff like that that is the reason that Buccaneers fans have just absolutely fallen in love with what Baker does for this football team. His attitude, his play, his presence, his leadership, his standing in the community, all of it can be, you can kind of point to that play as just the kind of person that Baker Mayfield is. And I thought that was incredible. That certainly gave the rest of the offense a little bit of a spark. Fausto says the run game was absolutely electric in this game. Jay Jones says, "See God," of course, meaning Chris Godwin. I've called him Rod God. My youngest son calls him the greatest receiver to ever live, mostly because he just scored 33 points for my son's fantasy team. Randy says, I made the live Cleveland fan turned Buccaneers fan. The Bake Show and defense held. Love to see that. And yeah, I guess it's a good thing that you jumped over to the Buccaneers side, because those Cleveland Browns, they are certainly going through it. Brian in the chat says, tough for receivers to get back in the groove. McMillan will get back to game speed soon. McMillan had a rough outing, and there were a lot of people on social media talking about he needs to be benched, he needs to be cut. Absolutely not. I mean, think about it. This was only his fourth career game. He missed the last 2 weeks with injury, and he started off the season pretty strong, had that bad, you can't call it a drop because the ball went straight up in the air, but that was his only target of the game. He really didn't get a shot at redemption on that one, which I was a little disappointed in, but McMillan is going to be absolutely fine. I was far more disappointed with what was going on with Sterling Shepard than I was with that one play by Jalen McMillan. But I got my biggest takeaways on both sides of the ball. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay ready and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, as well as Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compound products, which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or if you did, maybe it's time for a little bit of a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and a personal favorite of mine, Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, and selected short stories. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it is now 2 shows every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. My biggest takeaway from this one on the offensive side of the ball, Sean Tucker has earned more snaps. The old adage is, of course, that you cannot lose your job due to injury. We know that's a lie, but that's what people say. Generally, you can kind of look to that with some truth behind it, but Rachaad White might have seen his share of snaps diminish significantly thanks to the play of Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving on Sunday. Tucker ran for almost 10 yards a carry. He rushed 14 times for 136 yards and a touchdown, added another 56 yards and a touchdown in the receiving game. Irving, 14 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown, another 24 yards through the air. For reference, Rachaad White had 186 yards on the season coming into this week. And for the record, I do think that Rachaad would have been really effective against the Saints defense. They could not find an answer for the Buccaneers rushing attack that went for 277 yards. But he's also had opportunities against bad run defenses this season and didn't come anywhere close to this level of performance. Tucker's power running style and really impressive vision led to one of the more impressive Buccaneers running back performances in recent memory. Yes, the Buccaneers lost help in pass protection because Irving and Tucker are not as good in that facet as Rachaad White is. I said it over at the 813. I said it on a ESPN appearance with New Orleans. Losing Rachaad does hurt the pass protection a little bit, but they didn't lose anything anywhere else. The running game was absolutely electric, and the two backs caught every one of their targets for a combined 80 yards. This was a statement by Liam Cohen that the Bucs, even without Graham Barton, can run the football. Buck and Tuck, as some people are affectionately calling them now, were the perfect balance of power and agility. Both had rushes for over 30 yards. Both got into the end zone on the ground. Both were over 5 yards a carry. And let's not forget that Bucky Irving had 2 different runs of 8 yards called back due to stupid penalties that were away from the play and really had absolutely no bearing on the play. Irving could have finished with 16 for 97 instead of 14 for 81. Rachaad brings something to this offense. There's no question about it. But this game might have made the Bucs backfield situation a little more murky. You cannot have Sean Tucker have the game that he just did and then go back to Rachaad getting the majority of the snaps and carries. This backfield has just turned into a 3-headed monster, which is going to be a complete nightmare for fantasy football players, but it's going to be a nightmare for opposing defenses as well. Also, shout out to Evan Klosky, whose bold prediction was, I believe it was Sean Tucker over 60 all-purpose yards or over 60 rushing yards, whatever it was way, way under. He didn't go bold enough. My bold was Bucky Irving over 100 all-purpose yards. He did hit that. My defensive takeaway in this one is that the pass rush showed up. The first half was not pretty, especially that second quarter, but the Bucs pass rush went to work in the second half. 3 sacks of Spencer Rattler in the second half, countless pressures that forced bad passes to open players. There was one in particular where he threw behind Alvin Kamara, who had plenty of green grass in front of him to pick up a third down, thanks to the pressure of a blitzing Tykee Smith. Kalijah Kancey, Yaya Diaby, Vita Vea, Logan Hall, Tykee Smith, Antoine Levante, Britt, they all came with the heat. Tykee, Antoine Levante, Britt, they were coming on blitzes play after play. Bowles got into his bag in the second half. Now, Rattler finished with a passer rating of 60.7, had over 200 passing yards, really looked good on some of these plays. A credit to him. That was a tough situation to go into. And then he faced a lot of problems in that second half. But I think Saints fans should be cautiously optimistic about what Spencer Rattler can be for that team moving forward. But I can't imagine that there were really any positive points in Rattler's passer rating outside of the second quarter. He was sacked 5 times. He was hit 10 times. He had 2 interceptions. The pass rush from the Bucs was absolutely suffocating in the second half. Kalijah Kancey and Antoine Winfield Jr. play such a huge role in what Todd Bowles is able to do with all the other pieces on defense. And when they returned, you knew that Bowles was going to be able to draw some things up. I beat that dead horse all week long of how important Kancey and Antoine are to this defense. It allowed Diaby and Tykee to really have some great opportunities. They both essentially had sacks taken away from them from blatant holds that were not called. Vea got one, Kancey got one, Britt and Braswell combined on one. So shout out to Chris Braswell for his first career sack. Golston got one at the end of the game. Levante got one. The pressure was coming from all angles in all different looks. And I think back to a terrible pass that Rattler had because Bowles put 7 guys up on the line of scrimmage. It was everybody. There were linebackers on the line. There was Tykee Smith up there on the line. I think Antoine was up in the box on that play. and then only 3 Bucs rushed after the passer. The offensive line was confused. They let Joe Tryon-Shoyinka blow right past them, virtually untouched, and almost sack Spencer Rattler. Bowles was bringing Tykee on blitzes. He was bringing Antoine. He was bringing KJ Britt, who's not known for coming in and being able to pressure the quarterback. Any player on any given play could have been the extra man that Bowles was sending after Rattler, and that was ultimately the difference in that second half. And again, credit to Rattler. He played really, really well. He extended plays with his legs. He had some really impressive passes, fit some throws into some tight windows. But this defense found something in the second half that they are going to need to carry over next week against the Baltimore Ravens, who are now the only other team in the NFL to beat the Washington Commanders. Florida Man is in the chat saying Tucker looked awesome. Remo says Rattler thought he was Patrick Mahomes. He looked like he could have been on a couple of those plays and really, did a solid job, of, like I said, extending plays. He picked up some positive gains with his legs. That kid's got a cannon. If I'm the Saints, I'm really excited about what Rattler can be. And if I'm the Bucs, I'm a little concerned about what Rattler can be because he can be something special for sure. Jimbo Shrump says them boys showed up in the second half. They absolutely did. Let's see. We got Demon Hunter says, can we give kudos to Jake? He was definitely better today than he has been all year. I will agree with that. He did have the one punt that was returned for a touchdown by Rashid Shaheed that kind of sparked everything for the Saints. That wasn't on Camarda. That was on the coverage. That was a really, really good punt. His best punt of the day got negated by a penalty. He had to re-kick it where he was then run into and knocked down, and there was no flag there. So that was a whole fiasco. But no, Jay Camarda really, really did look a lot better than he has recently. You knew he was going to get the opportunity when the Bucs did not promote Trenton Gill up from the practice squad for this game. We are handing out game balls. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players leaves in the first half and doesn't return. PrizePicks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, all one word, on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You do not need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Whether you're dodging tackles on the field or cheering from your couch, The Joint Chiropractic has your back. Literally, as an official chiropractor of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are here to make sure you're always in the game, no matter your role. If you're feeling the pain after a long week or just looking to stay active, they offer personalized care to help you bounce back stronger. 90% of elite athletes, including NFL pros, rely on chiropractic care to stay at the top of their game and perform their best. And at The Joint, you don't need an appointment. Just walk in and get the care you need same day. No scheduling hassles. Just walk in when it's convenient for you. Here's the real kicker. As a Buccaneers fan, you get your first visit for just $19. Head over to Buccaneers.com, check out the contest and promotion section under the fans tab, and download the offer. A great deal for the best fans. Head to thejoint.com to find your nearest Tampa area location. Wrapping things up here on a post-game live victory Sunday/Monday episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And you guys know how it works. You can start dropping your game balls in the live chat right now, but we start with the golden game ball. and this was a tough one. It really, really was, but I got to give it to Chris Godwin. I gave him my biggest moment of the game that I felt sparked everything in that second half. Finished with 11 receptions for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. Only the 8th time that a Buccaneers receiver has finished a game with 10 plus receptions, 100 plus yards, and 2 plus touchdowns. It was the second time in Godwin's career that he's done it, and it's the first time since Evans' famous hat trick game against the Carolina Panthers in Week 18 of 2022. Godwin just continues to torture and dominate the New Orleans Saints. They put so much emphasis on stopping Mike Evans that they forget about Chris Godwin, and I don't know how they can at this point. He has absolutely dominated them for pretty much his entire career. Game ball number 2, and my top game ball on the defensive side goes to Tykee Smith. That was a phenomenal performance, the best game of that young rookie's career. He had a forced fumble that was returned by Antoine Winfield Jr. for a touchdown in the first quarter. It was the first Saints drive, and Tykee Smith is out here forcing fumbles that turn into touchdowns. He had another forced fumble that was overturned and ruled as an incomplete pass on replay. It was a great play nonetheless, and I will say, watching that replay, unfortunately, I think the refs got that one right. I don't think he did enough to show possession on that catch before Tykee punched it out. Either way, Tykee is starting to get a feel for that peanut punch and is starting to create some takeaways for this Buccaneers defense. He had an interception late in the game to really seal the win for the Buccaneers. 5 tackles, 2 passes defensed, and really, yeah, he was kind of quiet after that opening drive forced fumble. When Jamel Dean left the game, Tykee Smith all of a sudden just took his game up to an entirely different level. Tyreek Funderburk played really well in Dean's absence. He was he played a solid game, but it was after Dean left that you really started to hear Tykee Smith's name come up over and over and over again. Game ball number 3 and the second one on the offense. This guy was this close to the golden game ball. It's Sean Tucker. His first career touchdown in the first half on a 36-yard catch and run. Finished with 136 rushing yards, 56 receiving yards, 2 total touchdowns. Sean Tucker accounted for nearly 200 yards of total offense and over 11 yards per touch. Set the tone in the second half with his power running, getting gain after gain, moving the sticks, giving the Buccaneers offense positive plays. He just abused the Saints defensive front. Really all throughout, but mostly in the second half after the Bucs were able to get that lead, and they really leaned on Sean Tucker to get the job done. And then my final game ball, the second one on the defensive side of the ball, and this one was tough. I could have taken the cop out and given it to like the whole defensive line. Could have gone to Levante, could have gone to Antoine, but I think this one goes to Zion McCollum, and he had another outstanding game, had a big-time interception, 2 key pass breakups. He had a fumble recovery on that one that was overturned, and ruled an incomplete pass, but he did a great job against the speedster Rashid Shaheed. He constantly rises to the occasion. And I think that's what we've really noticed about Zion McCollum is that no moment, no matchup, no play is too big for him. And depending on the severity of Jamel Dean's injury, we could be looking at Zion McCollum as being in charge of defending Zay Flowers next week when the Bucs host the Baltimore Ravens. Excuse me. And Flowers has been on an absolute heater the past couple of weeks. That's going to be a really, really tough test for Zion McCollum. Yeah, and I know somebody probably pointed it out in the chat. McCollum almost had 2 interceptions in this one. There was one where Radler kind of airmailed it. It was going to be a tough catch for Zion. He made the diving attempt and barely got his fingertips on it. But he just continues to raise his level of play and assert himself as the Buccaneers' top corner. Going to jump into the chat here and see who you guys are giving the game balls to. Fausto says that Tykee was fantastic. Destined for Greatness gives game balls to Chris Godwin. Sean Tucker and Zion McLockdown. I love that. Gary says game ball to Gus Swayze. I love that. For those that didn't see, there's a show on Amazon Prime where Baker Mayfield goes undercover as Gus Swayze and interacts with some fans during a tour. It's really, really entertaining. My son and I really enjoyed that. Space Windu, shout out for the Star Wars reference there, says, I've been screaming Tucker since game one. He's earned some snaps, man. He has earned some snaps. He has earned some touches. Bantry says, give Funderburk a full week of practice with the ones, and I think he supplants Dean. Interesting. I do think he's going to be even better with a full week of practice. Again, the injury looked bad for Jamel Dean. It's listed as a hamstring injury. I was talking with one of the insiders. I apologize. I can't remember which one. I was interacting with a lot of you throughout that game, but they texted me and said, as soon as Dean made that hit, I knew he was hurt. And I said, I felt the exact same thing. I thought it was going to be his shoulder. I really did. The way that he hit, I believe it was Kamara that he hit. I thought for sure that was going to be a shoulder issue. Instead, it was listed as a hamstring. Let's see. Steven says, Space, I was so excited when we got Tucker, then so disappointed last season. So happy to see him ball out today. Gonna get just a couple of others. Destined for greatness. This looks like the Jugs machine has paid off for Zion. Indeed, it has. He's a third of the way to his goal of 6 interceptions, something a Bucs corner has not done since Aqib Talib in 2010. Fausto, thank you. It was Bub Means. Appreciate that. It was Bub Means that Jamel Dean hit when he got injured. Let's see if I can find any more game balls. We got Fausto giving one to Sean Tucker. Demon Hunter gives a game ball to the line for the protection and holes that they opened. So that he gives one to the entire offensive line who was without Graham Barton. K Breeze says, good to see Hempfield Jr. back on the field. And Paul, I'll leave it with this one. Vita Vea has had a sack in 3 consecutive games. You absolutely love to see it. That is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Please make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on so you know every time I go live. And make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform. If you would be so kind and feel so inclined, hit the like button on YouTube, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Those things do help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Check out everything going on over at the 813.tv. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding Victory Monday. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.